This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stock Box interview.
Hello, joining us today is Clarissa Shoemi-Makoka, the CEO of Oxford Cannabinoid Technologies, following news on the raising of £640,000 through a share placing and a CLN agreement with Cannabinoid Capital. Hi, Clarissa.
Hi, Pam. Nice to be here.
Nice to have you with us today. Now, the raise was at a significant discount to the share price, and the share price has dropped 20% on the news. Was it necessary to do such a heavily discounted raise? And is it worth doing for the benefit of shareholders? Tell us more.
It's a good question, Pam. Look, I think the capital markets have been a challenging place over the last 24 months, the last 12 months in particular. There are a lot of businesses out there that are trying to raise capital. I don't think you'll find too many that are doing it at discounts that are much different to the discount we did on the equity today. Of course, the equity is only part of the story, so that's £640,000 in equity from existing and new shareholders to support the next stages of our development. But we've also got that convertible that you mentioned with a sector specialist and healthcare sector specialist investor based in the US, Cannabinoid Capital. And that, of course, has got a floor price of the issue price we went out at today, but is actually converting at a discount to the price, or a 10% discount to the VWAP, or the volume weighted average price of the shares when the time comes for conversion. So, we're hoping with the fundraise that we've done today and the operational progress that's going to allow us to deliver, that we'll be able to grow that share price significantly. So that element of the fundraise will therefore be being delivered at a higher price.
And we can talk a little bit more about that shortly, but capital reorganisation, that included in the RNS statement today about capital reorganisation, where the company will subdivide its existing ordinary shares. Now, the share capital will remain unchanged. Can you explain a little bit more about what's happening here and what does it mean?
Yeah, certainly. So with my sort of former lawyer hat on, not my CEO hat, it's quite a simple process. It is an administrative process, essentially. Our previous nominal value of our shares, which is the lowest value that you can issue new shares at when you've got a nominal value, was 1 penny. So obviously the shares have been trading around that and below that for some time. In order to raise money and issue new shares, we need to just adjust that nominal value. We do that by way of a simple reorganization. It doesn't mean anything in respect of dilution for existing investors. Essentially, what you do is break those shares in two and create a new class of deferred shares. So you've got the same amount of original ordinary shares. They just happen to have a nominal value of 1/10 of a penny rather than a penny, and then deferred shares for 1/9 or 90% of a penny, which match up. They'll never be admitted to trading. They don't give any dilution to the share capital of the company, hence the announcement confirming that the issued share capital remains the same following the reorganisation process. It's something that was authorised by our shareholders with an overwhelming majority at our AGM back in September. So it shouldn't be new news for people. It's really just a reminder that we had that authorisation, and now that we've done the fundraise that we wanted to do, we're going to the FCA to get that administrative box ticked so we can actually issue those shares and get on with the more important work of the R&D that we want to do.
Sure. So this means that the company will have approximately 1.15 million available now. So that's 1.15 million pounds available now. Whenever you spend the money, you want to get something worthwhile for it. So what would be the most desired outcome or the main objective? What's the main use for the money?
Good question. So use of proceeds, really focusing in on our second program, which is an inhaled cannabinoid device. So a drug device combination delivering THC and CBD in a neuropathic pain space. We're particularly targeting trigeminal neuralgia, which is a very severe and sudden onset facial pain condition, quite poorly served by current treatments out there at the moment, which include surgical interventions, muscle relaxants, and so on. It's an orphan market, an orphan disease, although worth 1.8 billion pounds. So a significant market, significant problem to solve. So we'll be focusing most of the spend on advancing that program into the clinic, into our phase 1 clinical trial for that program. We will also be opening INDs, or investigational new drug applications, with the FDA in the US for both our lead programs. So 461201, which is targeting chemotherapy-induced peripheral neuropathy with a totally new chemical entity, patent protected, and oral delivery mechanism. And then with the second program too, the inhaler that I just mentioned. So we've got some significant operational progress in pushing one program into the clinic and getting those INDs opened, and of course extending working capital for up to 12 months. So it's really delivering some quite important milestones for investors.
Yeah, it's interesting that you should mention this, because of course, looking at the end result in terms of the product, you mentioned then CBD and THC combined together. Is this something new in terms of on the market for treating this condition?
For treating this condition, yeah, absolutely. So I think people are quite familiar with CBD or THC, that the molecules that come from the cannabis plant. What we're doing with this particular program is taking those molecules in a proprietary combination. It's a 1-to-1 formula, but there's a formulation that we have actually filed a patent around earlier this month. So we are taking a different approach, using inhaled pressurized metered dose delivery mechanism to target specifically trigeminal neuralgia. Now, the difference in our approach, I think, to those who might be going down the medical cannabis route or the simple sort of CBD oil route, is that we're taking the regulatory route to approval. So we want to take our medicines through the full clinical pathway, preclinical work, phase 1, 2, 3, all the way up to regulatory approval from say FDA or the MHRA, so that both doctors and patients are confident that the medicine they're being prescribed is both safe to take and also will work for the specific condition that they have gone to the doctor, to the physician for treatment about.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, it's a huge market. But of course, through the inhalation device as well that you're mentioning, there's a lot of potential there. As you said, you're going through the official route. So it's quite a long, lengthy process. How can you ensure that both the company and the shareholders are getting the bang for the buck?
Yeah, another good question. I mean, I think for us, the most significant value inflection points for pharma companies, for biotech companies like ourselves, come when you move your assets through the clinical pathway. So, if you're at the very beginning of the journey, you've got a lot of risk, and therefore the valuation is lower. As you begin to move through the steps, so getting through your early testing, identifying a lead candidate, getting your preclinical research done, making an application, and starting your first clinical trial, phase 1, all of these are steps along the way which de-risk and therefore increase value for shareholders and for the company, and ultimately bring medicines that bit closer to patients who need to access new treatments for these types of conditions. So I think really the regulatory route, although it can look long and it can look laborious, it's in place for a very good reason. At the end of it, it does deliver safe and efficacious medicines for people who they've got confidence in what they're taking. And that is ultimately where the real value lies. If you look at companies like GW Pharmaceuticals, for instance, who took CBD oil through the regulatory pathway for a specific condition in very rare form, childhood epilepsy. They were acquired by Jazz Pharmaceutical for a sort of eye-watering $7 billion back in 2021. So, it really does demonstrate the value that is delivered when you do go through and take these medicines through to regulatory approval.
Absolutely. Now, are you able to set out any key milestones or checkpoints to assist both the company to ensure that they're meeting their objectives, and also to keep shareholders informed on progress and development?
Yeah, of course. So, we have to be a bit careful as a public company on the things that we share before various things are signed up. But of course, we are currently, and we've already announced that we are towards the end of a very lengthy and thorough RFP process for appointing our CRO partner in Australia to commence those phase 1 clinical trials for our second program. So that will probably be something that people should be looking out for, the appointment of that CRO. And then following that, the announcements that you'd expect in line with the pathway that we're on, the phase 1. So, things like first patients, first visit, and then dosing and then results along the way of the trial. So, it'll be operational milestones for us. And I think a lot of our investors are quite connected to the timetable and the work that we're doing. So they'll be certainly sure to be looking out for the next 6 to 12 months for all of the updates that we'll no doubt be back to talk to you about.
That's great, Clarissa. And no doubt you'll be back on to talk to us here at Stockbox as well. We've been following your journey and looking forward to speaking to you again shortly.
Thanks very much, Pam. It's nice to talk.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.